So we'd like to invite you to come closer. You can fill up the first 2-3 rows, and you can also scoot your chair up as well. This is quite a big hall, so it can feel spacious. So dear friends, let us savor 3 sounds of the bell offered by Brother Febding, our famous work coordinator in the Brothers Hamlet. So good morning, dear community. Happy New Year. Flowers not just for the new year, but also for yourself. Today is not just the first day of January in the year 2025, but it is also the last day of our retreat. And you are still here to this moment. It's very easy to check out early. Oh, I have to get home. Oh, I have work, family, kids, long drive, long travel. And they're all valid reasons. But you were able to arrange your time to spend up until the very last minute of the retreat. And that's very precious. We are here at Magnolia Grove Monastery. And the theme of our retreat for this holiday retreat is love within, love all around. I'd like to ask, how many of you remember the first time when you fell in love? Can you raise your hand? Not a crush, but really falling in love. So because the theme of our retreat is about love, I'd like to invite us to look at the different kinds of love that we were introduced to in our lives. So we have the typical romantic love. We also have unrequited love. We have possessive love. We have attachment under the guise of love. We also have unconditional love. We have platonic love. parental love, love in friendships. We also have tough love. Who's a fan of that? In Buddhism, we have a very special kind of love, and it starts with a B. Can anyone guess? It's called bodhicitta, the mind of love, the mind of understanding. Traditionally, it's translated as the mind of enlightenment, and I never really connected with that because I always thought, what does that even mean? But the mind of love and the mind of understanding makes it easier to relate to connect with. Our teacher has a famous saying in Vietnamese. I'll say it in Vietnamese first. It's called Thương mà không hiểu người thương, làm người mình thương bị thương. And the first time I heard that line, I was like, wow. It means if you love your loved one without understanding your loved one, then you make your loved one hurt. And that's a wordplay in Vietnamese. Thương is love, bị thương is to be hurt or to be wounded. I used to always think that I knew what love was because my first introduction to love was fatherly love. I grew up with my father and he showered me with love. I was the youngest. I'm the youngest in my family, and we grew up in poverty, and he would always try to make it up to me in this way or that way. So I knew he loved me. But gradually as I grew up, I started to fall out of love with my father, and I couldn't understand it. Especially when I reached my teenage years. I could not understand. How is this not foolproof, this love that I had for my dad? Why is it that suddenly everything he says becomes annoying? Why is it that everything he says just makes me cringe? And why is it so suffocating all of a sudden? Did you eat yet? Did you shower yet? Did you do this yet? Did you do that yet? And I'm like, oh. I'm like, Dad, just leave me alone. And he was so hurt and shocked. Like, why would I leave you alone? I love you. So I suffered a lot with this because I thought, maybe I'm a bad person. Because the greatest suffering that I thought was, at the time, was unrequited love. I would hear so many love songs about unrequited love and so many movies and stories, and I thought, my dad loves me so much, but why don't I love him back in turn? What's wrong with me? And it was a really big conflict I had inside, and I'd always beat myself up, and at the same time, I couldn't stand listening to my dad say certain things or do certain things. And the more I would tell him, Dad, don't do that, don't say that, the more he would do that or say that. And when I think of this line, thương mà không hiểu người thương, làm người mình thương bị thương. When you love without understanding, it makes your loved one hurt. I thought, that makes so much sense. But how often do we reassess our understanding of our loved ones? It's very easy to think you already know your loved ones. You always say that. You never do this. I know you. But do we? My dad used to always love eating taro, this purple root vegetable. And in my mind, I thought, my dad likes taro. So at every chance that there was taro, I would always offer it to him. If there was a taro-filled dessert, or if there was taro-filled egg roll, I would always think, my dad, and just offer it to him automatically. In the recent years, though, I noticed my dad wasn't as excited when I would offer him a special taro cake or something I've saved for him. And I'm like, but Dad, you like taro, don't you? And he was like, nah, I used to. And I was like, when did this happen? How did I lose out of touch with my dad? I thought I knew him. And it's the same with my sister, my older sister. How many of you have a sibling? So I have an older sister. And when we were little, we always bickered. And the only time that we ever had any semblance of harmony was when we ate bread. We grew up with Vietnamese baguette bread, and she loved the billowy, soft inner filling of the bread. And I loved the exterior, crusty bit of the bread. So we would tear our bread, and she'd give me the crusty bit, and I'd give her the soft, billowy bit. That was the only time we would ever be in harmony. And after many years, I forgot. I had forgotten this about my sister. And coming back home for home visits, I would try to make dishes that I thought she liked, or even at times what I liked, oftentimes. And one day I made quiche, homemade quiche, and I thought this is special. I grew up in France, so I took a liking to many different French dishes. And on this particular day, I noticed my sister was picking at the quiche. And I thought, what's wrong? Is it too cold? Should I reheat it? And she was like, no, I don't like quiche that much. I don't really like it. And I was like, but then why don't you tell me? And she was like, well, because you put so much work and time and effort, and you made it. And I was like, but, and I was like, yeah, but I do that too. I also don't tell my loved ones when I can tell them. And then, to add to this, she only ate the filling and threw away the crust. And I was like, oh, double the pain, because I love the crust. I even chose the best looking crust. And it dawned on me, this is where I didn't really apply the teaching of understanding your loved one. My sister likes soft, billowy filling of the bread, and I like the crunchy exterior part of the bread. So of course she's gonna throw away the crust. I can't impose my views and my likes onto my sister. But we often do that with our loved ones. We give what we like to them in hopes that they will also enjoy what we like. Every year at Christmas time, I always learn a lot about my siblings through the gifts I receive. I remember one year where I received so many pink wrapped gifts, and I was like, oh, this sister really likes pink. I don't like pink. Or my sister would give me tea, and I'm like, I drink coffee. So that's not to say that I was ungrateful. It's just to say that I realized what I learned about my sisters. And then I can offer that in turn to my sisters. And then also be open. So what if I don't like certain things? I can learn to like them. So I think it would be amiss to speak about love, about true love, without mentioning our teacher Tai. How many of you see him here in this hall? Can you point to where? So many directions, right? Some of you may notice our altar, we have a picture of Tai. But some of you have also pointed in other directions, Because Tai is not sitting there. Tai is actually inside of each one of us. Tai is inside of the books on either side of the hall. But he's also not inside of those books that he's written. Tai lives on in us if we allow ourselves to embody Tai. Tai is the outer teacher, but he's also the inner teacher. And I first learned about true love through Tai, even before I physically met him. The first time I went to my local temple, not the first time, one day when I was at the local temple, I was really upset at one of the children. We were playing some game and we got mad and we started yelling at each other. You didn't follow the rules. No, but you made up the rules as we were playing, so that's not fair, it doesn't count. And I got really upset and I left and I barged down this hallway. I didn't even know where it led to. I just ran because that's what you do. You run away from suffering. And I opened this door and I entered this room and I slammed the door because that's what you do when you're mad. You let people know you're angry by slamming the door. There was no one around, but I just did it out of habit. And then I was storming in, and then I sat down, and then I was crying and crying and crying. Life is so unfair. Why is everyone so mean to me? Why me? Why does anyone listen to me? And I was crying and crying. I don't know why. I suddenly looked up at the wall, and I saw a calligraphy. It said simply, "Breathe, my dear." And I don't know why, but I was so obedient. And I started to listen, and I started breathing, and I was crying like this. And then slowly, my crying subsided until it was just hiccuping, like, until the storm finally completely calmed down. And then I was just mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out, not knowing what mindfully meant. Just slowly breathing in, slowly breathing out. It might have taken hundreds of mindful breaths, of slow breaths, but gradually I arrived at a sense of peace, a sense of inner calm. And then I didn't even remember what I was mad at. And it didn't really even matter so much anymore, what I was so upset about. That was my first taste of inner peace. That's not to say that we can dismiss the shouting or the bickering or the what went wrong, but it helped me to see a different option. I don't have to always react with anger, with rage, with violence. And by being still, I could see things more clearly. Oh yeah, it's normal to disagree. Oh yeah, but I don't have to always be angry or slam the poor door. No, I can listen without reacting. That's an option. And when I think of Tai, I think of unconditional love. But I didn't always arrive at receiving love so easily. Growing up without motherly love, I always thought something was wrong with me. And I always thought, well, I guess that just means I won't know how to love anyone else. Because that's what we're told, right? Like, your parents teach you how to love, and then you can love others. And if you grew up in a broken family, then how are you going to love anyone? But Tai was this figure of unconditional love. And everywhere he went, he was like a magnet, and everyone would just come towards him. And I ordained in Plum Village, France, and we were called the baby nuns. There was a group of us. And for some odd reason, every time I saw Tai, at the corner of my eye, I would flee like there was no tomorrow. And if he was coming towards this way, I'd run in the opposite direction in another way. And I thought to myself, but why? People would pay to come and be in the presence of this Zen master. And why am I running in the opposite direction? And it was like a flight and flee. It was like a fight or a flee response. Like it was my lizard brain that was turned on every time I saw him. And I was assigned to be his attendant, which is his personal assistant. And it was such a powerful presence that I embodied. And I couldn't run away from him because I'm supposed to carry his bag, I'm supposed to carry his tea. But at the same time, this strong habit energy in me of running was very strong, it's still very present. And we always worked in pairs. So I would tell the other nun, you sit with Tai, I'll do the background things. And usually the other nun would be like, okay, sure. But at times we had to switch. And it took me a lot of time to ease into Tai's presence. And I realized that Tai is a mirror, and he reflected everything that I didn't like in myself, and everything that I thought he had that I didn't have. He had this inner calm, this inner peace, this inner freedom. He wasn't running, I was always running. He was always at ease, I was always insecure. And he had this great sense of non-fear. I was always fearful. And gradually with time, I realized that I have to learn how to accept unconditional love in order to give unconditional love. I have to ingest unconditional love first before I can generate that and offer that. In Tai's style of unconditional love, it wasn't some out of reach kind of love that we couldn't emulate. Tai's love was very simple. When we sat with him at meal times, he would say, come my child, sit next to me. And I'd like do half an inch, and he'd be like, come closer. I'm like, okay. And then, as we were eating, because he had his own tray of food with different dishes, he would take his chopsticks and then mindfully pick up a special dish of the day, and he'd place that piece of tofu or that piece of carrot or whatever he had that was offered that day into my bowl. And I'd be like, no, don't give me anything. Because Tai has these tiny dishes. It's really just for him. But his generosity was so much that he would always want to offer his children anything that he had. And even though it's just a piece of tofu, it's not just a piece of tofu. It's all of his love and care that he would place into our bowl of food. And that's how he showed his affection to us, by sharing his food, his attention, his care, his presence. And then any moment could be a moment of happiness. He would say, it's time to go to the upper hamlet or the lower hamlet. Let's go, come in the car. As if it was an adventure. But those are just our routine things that we did. We would travel to another monastery and he'd give a Dharma talk. But with Tai, everything was a moment of happiness. He would sometimes say, come my child, gather the monks and nuns for a cup of tea. I'm like, a cup of tea? That's like our regular, that's normal. But for Thai, anything could become magical, a magical moment. If he had an offering, if somebody offered him a small bit of cake, that would be the reason for us to gather all around and share this piece of cake in joy and togetherness. And he would tell us to also create these moments of happiness, these moments of joy and togetherness on our own. I remember one time in a Dharma talk, I told the young children in the audience, whenever your parents or in your family, when you feel there's tension in the house, you can ask your mom or your dad, mind you, if they know about the mindfulness practice, Mom, is there anything in the fridge? Dad, is there any cake in the fridge? And that would be code for, let's change the atmosphere in the house into a moment of happiness. And when I think of Thai with his unconditional love, I think about that. What are the small gestures that we can offer to ourselves and to others every day? How many of you drive? So the act of driving, it can be a mundane, routine act. Or it can be a challenge to drive with love. Doesn't that sound odd and foreign? How many of you are familiar with road rage? One time I was driving on the freeway and it was a really long line. It was a traffic jam, but at nighttime, the entire, all of the lanes on my side, we had one color, red. And all of the colors on the other lane, oncoming traffic, was white. And I thought, interesting. Christmas is here. We think Christmas is just December, but when I see red and white, I think, so this could be a moment of generosity. I don't have to offer money per se, or material goods. I can offer my sense of peace, my sense of non-fear, of well-being. And I can send well wishes to all of these cars. There's hundreds of cars, and also for the oncoming traffic as well. I think of unconditional love as my third nutriment. The third nutriment is called volition. And I used to think, what does volition mean? It's such a foreign word. But when I translate it into fuel, what motivates you? What's your fire? Then I think it's easier for me to understand. How many of you opt for premium gas when you fill your car, when you fill your tank? How many of you opt for the cheapest available fuel? We often opt for the cheapest fuel in our daily lives with ourselves and our loved ones because we think of what's most efficient, what's the easiest, what's the quickest. But actually, they're just habit energies. When I first learned about the term habit energy, I was like, wow, that's what it is. And habit energies don't have to be bad. They don't have to always be unwholesome. They can also be wholesome. When I think of the word Happy New Year, or I think of New Year, New Me, I always chuckle to myself because for me it's usually New Year, old me. I'm not really sold by the idea of writing New Year's resolutions, because I tend to dream really big and write really tall orders for myself. And then when I don't accomplish them, then I feel let down by myself. But if we break it down to habit energies, to understanding our habit energies as individuals and collectively, I think it's something that's more manageable for me. In this retreat, we learned about the 5 mindfulness trainings. And for me, the 5 mindfulness trainings, it's like 5 common habit energies that we have as humans. And since we're speaking about true love, I'd like to invite us to take a look at the 5 mindfulness trainings as a direction in life, a direction towards true love. Each of the mindfulness trainings starts with aware of the suffering caused by. But alongside that, we are offered different alternatives. Instead of doing this, let's do this. And even though each training is a paragraph, I like to zone in on just one sentence each time, so it's easier to focus on. For true love, we have many different sentences. One of the sentences I first noticed was when I first heard about our revised mindfulness trainings is, knowing that sexual desire is not love, and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others. But at times, I can look at other sentences. For example, I am committed to learning appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and to cultivate the 4 basic elements of true love: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness. I think these 2 sentences are related to what kinds of seeds we water as individuals and as society. This is also connected to the 3rd nutriment. I've always thought to myself, if people knew more about the monastic life as an option, if we saw advertisements on, do you want to embody inner freedom and to choose inner peace and to help many people in mindfulness retreats? This can be a dream job for free. Live a meaningful life. If you saw that on advertisements, or if you heard more stories about that, or billboards of a happy monastic, wouldn't that be interesting? Instead of our emphasis on craving or consumerism to fill the voids we have, or on greed, where does sexual desire come from? It's just a seed. Where does animal nature come from? It's just a seed. But what do we water as individuals or as society, as collective consciousness? We can choose to water fear, or we can choose to water non-fear. We can be a victim of what is watered around us, or we can proactively choose what to water. And the 4 elements of true love, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, it may seem like they're far away, far-fetched, and hard to grasp and reach, but we can do this a little bit every day. How many of you have a best friend? How many of you have good friends? Maybe not best, but good friends. How many of you are your own best friend? So a really good friend is someone who's there for you, right? If a friend is a good friend but's never there for you, they're always busy, always postponing, always, let's take a rain check. Maybe we can re-examine that. What about a friend who always judges and criticizes? Would you consider them a good friend or a best friend? Depends, right? If you're doing something that's really awful, that is self-destructive, and they intervene, maybe it's not easy to hear or accept. But if they're always belittling you or always watering seeds of unease and unhappiness, of feeling you're never enough? Or what about if you have a friend who you're talking to them and they're just constantly interrupting you? Would you call them a best friend? So loving kindness is learning how to be a good friend, to be present, to see what this person needs or doesn't need, to see what makes this person happy, what makes this person blossom. Can we offer that to this person? Compassion is a word we often hear about. I remember Tai emphasized to us, compassion means an action. Compassion isn't just sitting there and saying, oh, poor you, or oh, good luck next time. Compassion is acknowledging that they're suffering, but also finding a way to relieve that suffering or to remove that suffering. It's not just good intention and goodwill alone. An example I often offer in the children's program is, let's say we're walking on the road and we see there's a snail on the middle of the road. And there are some scenarios. We see the snail and we go, oh, be careful, snail, and we just walk off. Or we're walking along the path, we see the snail and we see, oh, this is dangerous. What if somebody steps on you? Let me not step on you. And then we continue on our path. And then another scenario is, we're walking along the path. We see the snail. We think, oh, somebody could accidentally step on the snail. Let me bend down, pick up the snail, and remove it and place it on to the side of the road where it can be safe enough. And I'd ask the children, so which one is compassion? If I didn't offer the third option, then they would say the second option, right? You didn't step on the snail, that's compassion. But if I didn't offer the second option, wouldn't you say the first option is still compassion? That's a compassionate thought. So most of the children would then decide that the third option, actually bending down to pick up this nail, to remove it from harm's way, is compassion. And so I would invite the children to think about themselves, to think about their parents, their family, their siblings, their friends, at school. What is an action of compassion that we can actively choose? If we see something that can be ameliorated, can we do something about it? Whether it's at home, or whether it's at school, or at work, or at the monastery, what can we do to alleviate, to lessen the pain? Joy. Joy is the third element of true love. How many of you remember a time where you were in a relationship and the thought came to you, if you love me, why do I suffer so much? Why does it hurt so much? Now that's a sign that maybe it's not true love. When you feel inspired to do better, when you feel happy for others, I think of joy as a replacement of jealousy. How many of you remember how it felt to feel envy? Feels really good, doesn't it? Why do you love him more? Why do you love her more? Or why didn't I get this prize or this certificate? Or why not me? Why them? But an option we have in Buddhism is to see others' joy, other people's success as our own, interbeing at its finest. And this requires some deep looking, in which I invite you to do in your own due time. Inclusiveness is the fourth element. I like to think of inclusiveness as another term, non-discrimination and equanimity. It's easy to think that your happiness and your well-being is separate from your parents' happiness or well-being, or your children's happiness or well-being, or other people's happiness or well-being. But when we really sink into the insight of interbeing, we can see how our happiness is directly connected to our loved one's happiness. Our suffering is directly connected to our loved one's suffering. And it's also easy to think of true love for other people, not so much for ourselves. But I invite you to not get caught in others or ourselves, but to see that there's a seamless kind of true love. I remember my siblings used to ask Tai, when are we going to get free time? We're always busy with all of these retreats. We always offer retreats to everyone else. Can we have a break? Can we have some solo retreats? And Tai would smile at us in his wise Yoda way. And he would say, your personal time? Your free time? And he would say, what, is sitting meditation not your free time? Is walking meditation not your free time? What do you mean by personal time? And he was trying to instill in us this insight of interbeing. The community time is my time. My time is the community's time. we can challenge ourselves as parents. My time is also my children's time. My children's time is also my time. Or at work, the time I spend at work is also my time, and vice versa. We're taught that you gotta get the work done so you can go home and do things that you enjoy. But at the monastery, we're invited to enjoy the work that we do. We work in such a way that we don't become burnt out. Because work will always be there, no matter how much we think we have accomplished. How many of you were in the pot washing team of this retreat? Did the dishes just never stop coming? The pots keep coming. Oh, one more spoon, one more plate. So work is never really done. So we might as well learn the art of enjoying our work. We might as well enhance the work with a sense of service, offering service to humanity. When we take care of our children or our loved ones, we are offering the best we can to humanity by creating happy humans. So this is a kind of investment. We don't have to carve out an hour to practice sitting meditation. We can have moments or minutes of meditation. And we can enhance our daily life with meditation in anything. Whether it's our commute, whether it's brushing our teeth. When you're brushing your teeth, technically that's your time. Technically, no one should be saying, hey, did you do this yet? Hey, where's this assignment? Or where's that report? Technically, it's your time. So why not make use of the time that is labeled as our time? Living here in the monastery, we have retreats year-round. Whether it's these kinds of themed retreats here, or whether it's our so-called off-season retreats, personal retreats. And oftentimes I would hear friends say, oh, I enjoyed the retreat so much, and I'm dreading going back to the real world. And I would grit my teeth a little bit and think, what do you mean by real world? Are you saying my monastery is not a real world? That's not fair. What if I went to your house and I had a great time, and then I ended with, I'm dreading going back to the real world? We're not a Disneyland or a resort. We're not just a bandage. We open up our home to everyone. But this is the same that goes on, whether you're here or not here. The mindfulness goes on. The meditation is our way of life. And I often think of our monastery as a controlled environment. Have any of you ever visited an orchid farm before? You should try. Orchid farms are usually just for wholesale retail. So we're quite lucky. The first time I visited an orchid farm, I was speechless. I was caught by surprise of the beauty. There's so many orchids, and they're all so pretty. I couldn't decide. I was like, oh, this one or that one? Oh, this color. Oh, but this one has 2 branches. Or that one's on sale. There's so many kinds of orchids. And in the orchid farm, they have a controlled environment. It's the perfect degree. It's a perfect weather. It's a perfect climate for producing orchids at a mass production rate. And I thought of our monastery as being a kind of a controlled environment. in the sense where it's conducive to meditation, to inner freedom, to generosity, to kindness, to all of the things that we would like to have more. And if we would like to create this kind of environment, we can. In our home setting, in our work setting, in our school settings. But it requires community. A monastery isn't a monastery without community. I visited many monasteries, many temples, and the first thing I look for is not the statue, it's not the size of the temple, but it's the people. I look to see, do they have monastics here? And then if they do, are they happy monastics? And in the same way, the mindfulness practice that we enjoy, we can't do it alone. Our teacher is a renowned Zen master, and he would always emphasize Sangha. He would always emphasize community. And he would always say, no matter how talented you are, you can't go far alone. And I thought, but Tai, you're talented. You have so much wisdom. You can go alone. And yet, he never went alone. Every time he was invited to go to the White House or go to give a press conference or anywhere, he would always, or an interview, he would always say, do you have space for 20 monastics? Do you have space for 30 monastics or even 100 monastics? So everywhere we go, we need community. And even without the Dharma, like our Buddhist communities, we see everywhere. We have different kinds of communities, different groups, whether it's AA, whether it's other groups of support. So we can go back home and find a local community, or create a local community, or reach out to online communities and find like-minded friends. Do you remember the fire we had yesterday for our New Year's celebration, where we burned our New Year's resolutions? The fire we had wasn't that big. We've had fires where it was quite tall, maybe like 3 feet tall. And usually it's because we have to have enough things to burn. But if we had wet wood, we just have smoke. We can say, well, I burned the fire, but if you burn it with wet wood, you can't really get the same kind of result, right? But if we poured some gasoline on, for sure we'd get a big fire. And it's the same for us. If our fuel, if our fire is unconditional love, if our fire is bodhicitta, and if we had a local community where everyone also is burning with love, we can go very far. Let us look back at our year as individuals. What seeds have we watered over the year? What have we consumed with our eyes, with our nose, with our mouth, our ears, our sense impressions? What are our top 10 habit energies? 5 wholesome, 5 unwholesome. Our habit energies are simply an accumulation of what seeds we have watered in us. And then now let's look at our state. What are some cultural habits we have from our state? And then what are our common tendencies? What is our common habit energy as a nation. When we think of holidays, what do we think of? Growing up in America, I always thought it was quite curious how at every holiday we resort to killing. We chop a tree to celebrate Christmas. We kill turkeys to celebrate Thanksgiving. And I don't mean to diss anyone. I'm just inviting us to re-examine at our common habit energies, individual and collective. And in Asia, it's quite common for us to celebrate the Buddha's birthday with offering free food, with releasing birds and fishes, with honoring the first mindfulness training, reverence for life, and the second mindfulness training, generosity, giving. So we can re-examine our habits, our habit energies as individuals, as a nation, and then we can actively decide, what do we want to water? Has fear been a big seed that has been watered? Is fear a common habit energy? If we have 100 people and all of us are filled with fear, how does that feel like? And then what does the energy of fear push us to do? Is it conducive to deep listening and loving speech? Can we actively choose non-fear? How do we arrive at non-fear? Our teacher teaches a lot about non-fear, so you're more than welcome to look for his Dharma talks on YouTube as well as his books. He's far more eloquent than many of us, including myself. But also, I'd like to challenge us when we go home to our climate at home. Can we be creative? How can we make our own mini monastery at home? How can we have our mini retreats in our everyday life? Instead of being upset when we see the red light, we can see the red light as a reminder to stop and breathe mindfully. Or if we have a staircase at home, that can be our mindful pact. Every single step that we take, going up or down, will be a mindful step. Our teacher first introduced us to this, and he said, if you are almost at the top of the staircase already, you have one more step, and you realize you forgot mindfulness, go back down to the bottom of the stairs and start all over again. And this is how we create a new habit. This is how we reinforce a new habit energy. I'd like to ask, how many of you are musicians? How many of you are writers? I'd like to invite you to compose a new practice song, to write a new Dharma story. We don't have to be victims to what already exists. We can always be creative in making new Dharma songs, new Dharma books, Dharma stories, Dharma movies. And please share them with us. We can always grow together. And I'd like to ask, how many of you will carry the memory of the first day of our retreat with you back home? I'm wondering if your memory was the power outage. When we had that power outage, And when you were offered a tiny candle, how did you feel? Did you say, oh, this is just a puny candle, it can't do anything? Or did you give rise to gratitude? Oh my goodness, thank you for this candle, thank you for this light. It's so dark outside, or dark inside your room or your cabin. Now I have this candle, I can see. The candle only radiates enough light to whatever's most closest to the candle. Sometimes when we hold the candle up, it can shine light all around to anything that's underneath the light. And then sometimes we can bring the light closer and we can see, these are the objects here. Oh, okay, there's the table there, I won't bump into the table there. Or, oh, okay, I can see there's toilet paper, okay. Or here's the seat I didn't miss, okay. And in the same way, when we come home to our regular lifestyle at home, we can carry this candle, this light of mindfulness in our everyday lives. And we may think it's hopeless or it's helpless. It's hopeless against the system, or what can I do to change America? Or what can I do to change wars going on in the world? Please remember the power outage that we had. That little bit of light, it meant something, and it helped us in the moment. And now imagine all of us, each of us, we are all holding our respective candles. This candle can be a green light, a red light, a purple light. In the sense of collective consciousness, it can be the fear, the non-fear, hatred, or love, violence, or non-violence. So don't think that you're just a person. What can you do? You are a candle, you are a light. And when there's a power outage, that means everything. And when we gather together, it's even a bigger light. I always remember the Me Too movement, when we saw the footage of all the different states, how as worldwide we all gathered and we marched. And I was so moved because it really showed that when we gather together, we can make changes. We don't have to be a victim to suffering. So please remember to light your fire every day. If the fire is blown out, it's okay. We can just reignite. And please remember to often water your flowers, water your love, and find a local community. And we also have the Plum Village app, where you can remember to water your light of mindfulness every day. And this year, I already forgot. 2025 marks the 15th year of Magnolia Grove Monastery. And we will have many retreats in this year. So we would like to warmly welcome you to continue to join us in these retreats. We have some of the dates posted, as you might have seen on the door as you come in and out of our meditation hall. And it's also listed on our website as well. Thank you everyone for being a part of our Love Within, Love All Around holiday retreat. And we'd like to wish you a lot of unconditional love in this new year. And please remember to hold your candle of love and let your light radiate all around you. Happy New Year.